Welcome everyone to Our Unity, a show that wishes to spread a spirit of peace and love in the world, one conversation at a time.
None of that affects how you are going to change the world.
That's right.
No, it does not take one person to change the world, but it takes one person to believe in themselves.
Yes.
That they can make a difference.
I love
to
that.
Inspire others.
And that's why, for me, I try to make it my purpose now to try to help other people realize their self-worth, because it's so sad that so many of us, we get destroyed based off of what other people have to say.
Yeah.
I would say do it in your own way, make sure you're doing it on your own accord, and take a risk.
Go out there and live your life passionately. Believe in everything that you're doing and believe in the fact that you will accomplish every single goal. Welcome everyone to Our Unity, a show that wishes to spread a spirit of peace and love in the world, one conversation at a time. We want to encourage you to reflect on your past so that you can redirect your future. Take a look back at all of those past hurts or disappointments, those sadness or any broken relationships. Unpack those things so that you can restack them in the order in which they are priority in your life. We want you to have a healthy and happy and thriving life. So it is time for you to move forward in it. I'd like to welcome you in. I am your host, LeShawn Walker. Please like, share, and follow. Let everyone know that we're on right now. Today, my friends, we have a special show for you. My co-host is virtual today, so I want to bring her right in, the Reverend Dr. Casey Jones. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. It's been a rough start to the week, but when LeShawn calls me sunshine, that just helps the situations get better. It's such positive reinforcement. So thank you, LeShawn, for the sunshine.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. We have a new segment that we want to share with you guys. Reverend Dr. Casey Jones is, a woman in her own right, doing big things. She's a life coach. She's a Reiki specialist. She's a reverend. She's a doctor of philosophy. What is it? Doctor of ministry. So this woman, yes, exactly. This woman she has and holds so many hats. We've come together not only for the partnership of Our Unity and Defining You Life Fitness Center, but we're also going to be hosting together a monthly segment of what we're calling Society, Culture, and You. And so I want to just, start this day off with this amazing woman sharing first what she does, who she is. She is the founder of Restored Life Group and the Community Caring and Healing Center. So please share with us a little about who you are before we continue, Reverend.
Oh my goodness. Okay. You did such a wonderful job. I didn't know I was going to do this today. So thank you for having me. I am the principal at the Restored Life Group, which offers Christians and non-Christians alternative ways to heal, such as emotional freedom techniques and Reiki healing. And so that's what I do on one side of my life. And the other side is, like you say, Community Healing and Caring Center, which runs a program called the Wanted Project, youth mentoring program. We tell the kids that they're worthy, accountable, named, thankful, empowered, and determined. And so those two things in my life keeps me quite busy.
Yes, it's amazing. Well, again, it is so great for you to be here and also, share this conversation and this new segment that we're introducing, part of the Our Unity show with you. Again, I mentioned, guys, that she is also partners with Defining You Life Fitness Center. Last night, we had our season of Soul Check-In. It was a moment for us to just take a look back so that we can move forward. Unfortunately, you wasn't there last night, but I understand you were working on behalf of the Wanted Project there in Connecticut, correct?
I was, yes. We have a group of 7 young boys, 7 to 11, depending on the Monday. So that's here in Bloomfield, Connecticut. We also run a program in New York and another program in Ghana, West Africa. So, and we're looking to expand. So if anyone needs a youth mentoring program, get in contact with me and I can set you up with the Wanted Project.
I love that. I love that. Well, we had a beautiful meeting last night. The ladies we really just was encouraged, inspired, empowered after we left that meeting. It was really about us, unpacking the things in our lives that are not serving the person that we truly want to be. And so we delve into a lot. We encouraged each other just to work on manifesting and thriving in the life that God created us to lead. And it was really awesome. So you were missed, my friend. Again, we have our next meeting, our next check-in for the workshop next month on March 25th. So I'll be sharing more information on that, but it was truly amazing. And again, we missed you and hope to have you on the next one.
Absolutely, we'll be there. Can't wait.
Great, great. So we want to talk to you guys today about just that, transforming your life. What does that mean? There's so many ways that people sort of throw that word, those phrases out, transforming your life. How do you do it? What are the steps? And there's so many avenues that one can take. With us, we're life coaches. We take basically the same approach. We just probably do it in different mannerisms because of who we are. So I wanted us to speak about that today and speak about it with our new segment, which is Society, Culture, and You. So I want to tell everyone real quick what that is. Society, Culture, and You is just a show that delves into the multifaceted dynamics of human society and culture, examining topics such as social norms, cultural traditions, identity, diversity, and societal trends. Each episode will have discussions and interviews with experts and thought leaders and engaging narratives that shed light on the intricate interplay between individuals and the larger social and cultural environments in which they exist. So that's what we will be speaking with you about on a monthly basis. It will be the last Tuesday of each month. We'll just have an amazing dynamic guest on the show that will be able to just speak about what is really affecting us as individuals, but also the world as a whole. So we're going to introduce our first segment, Society, Culture, and You. Oh, I'm so excited. This is so amazing.
That was awesome.
Reverend Dr. Casey, you have brought us an extraordinary guest for our first show. The Reverend Dr. Yes, TLC. I love her name already. Tender Love and Care. I just love it. So we're going to be speaking with her, and the title of the show is Transforming Your Life with Sacred Intelligence. Please share with us who this extraordinary woman is, Reverend Casey.
Absolutely. Reverend Dr. TLC, a trailblazing force in the intersection of pastoring and psychology, is a powerhouse speaker, coach, and transformational leader. Armed with a BS from Howard University, a PhD from Hofstra University, and a Master of Divinity from Yale University, she proudly identifies as a pastologist, a licensed psychologist, and ordained minister. As a dynamic speaker, author, and retreat leader, Reverend Dr. TLC brings a unique approach to healing, transformation, and manifestation. Her focus is on guiding individuals towards sacred intelligence, the internal wellspring that propels them towards intelligent choices, honoring the sacred while embracing our shared humanity. Specializing in coaching highly influential leaders committed to world transformation, Reverend Dr. TLC is the go-to expert for spiritual, life, and career coaching. Her coaching extends beyond personal renewal, providing support to leaders aiming to dismantle systemic racial disparities, and effect positive change in their spheres of influence. Reverend Dr. TLC empowers leaders to foster crucial conversations on race and leadership development, understand the impact of racism and unconscious bias on hiring practices and financial goals, and grasp how racism affects employees and workplace dynamics. With a rich history of bridging racial divides in institutions and communities, she's a catalyst for promoting racial equity. The host of Dismantle Racism with the Reverend Dr. TLC on talkradio.nyc. She is also the acclaimed author of Dismantling Racism, Healing Separation from the Inside Out, In Quietness, Confidence, and Strength, Prayers to Deepen, Elevate, and Expand Your Relationships, and Sacred Intelligence, the Essence of Sacred, Selfish, and Shared Relationships. Additionally, Reverend Dr. TLC serves as the pastor of Martin Luther King Jr. Community Presbyterian Church in Springfield, Massachusetts, embodying strength and wisdom in every speaking engagement and opportunity she undertakes. Without further ado, let us meet Reverend Dr. TLC.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for being here.
It is such a pleasure. So I'm going to jump right into it. Reverend Dr. TLC, how did we meet again? I believe you were at a church in Elmont when I was at the church in Valley Stream.
Absolutely. Actually, so this is really interesting. Casey and I didn't really know each other well at all, or Dr. Casey. I want to make sure, because look, you work really hard for that. And there's a story behind that later on I might share. But and so in the Presbyterian tradition, there are not that many African-American churches. There are a few of us throughout the country. And when I was becoming ordained, I was looking for people who could serve,
right?
On my, the night of, to be on the program, because it's like a big wedding when you're ordained and installed. And someone recommended Reverend KC because she was in the area. So I really think that was probably our first time really connecting. And then we began sharing services together because our churches were close to one another and we were like-minded individuals. And we just grew from there in our relationship.
Absolutely. And that has been a true sisterhood ever since then. And I am grateful.
Mm-hmm. Likewise.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Oh, wow. Well, thank you for being here on the You're Our Unity show. I love already your sisterhood. I also met Reverend KC at Valley Stream Presbyterian Church, and I was unaware even that she was the pastor of that church. I thought it was her husband, and she quickly was like, no.
Oh.
Okay, so
you always tell that wrong. You always tell that wrong.
So yeah, I was quickly fully aware that who she was, and yes, it was the Reverend and now Doctor, which I'm so happy and so proud of her, Reverend KC. But yes, it is amazing, and I was very shocked because I ended up joining the church and realized that there weren't too many African Americans in the Presbyterian church. So after I did my little research, I was very, very impressed to see what she was doing and what she was trying to instill in Valley Stream. So yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So let's go on and delve into the conversation, ladies.
Well, Dr. TLC, I think you were going to say something.
Well, so the reason why I made sure that I corrected myself with the doctor, and I was thinking about this as you were reading my bio, and I don't know if you all ever do this, but it actually is good to reread your bio, because sometimes we move through life, particularly as women, and just try to get it done, whatever needs to be done. But we need to take a step back and go, wait a minute, wait, who? That's a bad sister that you're reading about, because we take it for granted. And especially sometimes, Casey, when we're in academia and we're around other folks who are doctors, we don't realize that not everybody is a doctor. I mean,
True.
Like for me, my doctorate, I have a PhD, and only 2% of the population gets a PhD. Now try Black and woman on top of that.
Right.
But I know so many doctors that you're not thinking about that.
Right.
So why do I use this as an example? One is because we need to understand who we are and what we've navigated in this life to be where we are. And we don't ever need to marginalize that.
Right.
And all too often, particularly because we are women of color, we're marginalized. But the second reason why is something my father told me. I was at my uncle's funeral one day, and my sister called me up to speak, but she called me by my name, and not even Carolyn, but by my middle name, which is the family name, right? She called me by the name. And when I got home, my father said, she should have called you doctor. And I said, Daddy, I don't care about that because I'm home. You're home with family. You're at a funeral. Everybody knows you. And he said, not for you.
That's right.
But for the people in that audience who could look at you and say, wait a minute, if she did it, I can do it. So really the work that we do, it is, yes, we want to honor who we are and honor that gift that God has given us, but it is also much bigger than us. And so I want to be sure, because I know the difficulty of getting a doctorate, right?
Yes.
And not everybody, if it was that easy, everybody would have it. So Dr. Casey, I want to especially make sure that I honor you in public spaces in that way.
Oh my goodness.
And so I've also had other people of color to say that to me as well, when I'll say, you don't have to call me that. In a professional setting, I've had other Black people to say, no, I'm going to call you doctor. Because if I call everybody else around here doctor, I'm for sure calling you that. So it's also a sense of pride for us as a people as well.
Well, thank you so much. As you can see, LeShawn, this is exactly why she's on this show.
Yes, indeed.
On everybody else's show, because she always has an uplifting word and always just brings you out of, whatever you were in. And thank God for you. So I'm going to get on with the first question, because we could talk all day like this. Let me ask you a question. So you started Sacred Intelligence. Can you explain what Sacred Intelligence is?
Yes.
And also, where were you spiritually speaking when you developed Sacred Intelligence?
Well, it's really interesting because God has a sense of humor. So my PhD is, I'm a clinical psychologist. So I'm sitting at a women's retreat one day, minding my business, and this mutual clergy friend that we know preached a sermon on, can you hear me now? And God had been moving me to ministry, but I kept saying, I'm not going into church. Church folks are crazy. I'm not doing that. But anyway, long story short, call to ministry. And one of the things I said to her was, I am already serving God as a psychologist. Why do I need a ministry degree? And she said, but what can you do as an ordained minister that you can't do as a psychologist? So when I was done with my degree, I thought, well, how will I merge these two things that I love? Because just because I didn't want to be a pastor did not mean that I didn't love God and love, sharing my gifts in that way. And what I realized is I wanted to merge psychology and pastoring. And a very dear friend of mine who was my coach at the time, when I told her what I wanted to do, she came up with the name Sacred Intelligence.
Love it.
And then I define it and, broaden what that is. And really our sacred intelligence is our ability to go inward, to tap into that divine part of us that helps us to make intelligent choices. So that's where the spirit and intelligence comes into play. And the thing is, those intelligent choices will help us to manifest our greatness while helping other people do the same. So it's all about me, 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 me. And the beautiful thing about sacred intelligence is it will tell you what you will allow other people to do to you, what you will do to yourself, and what you will do to other people. So those are the intelligent choices, right? And it's all divinely based.
I love
So
that.
that's where it comes from.
I love that.
That's amazing. So there are 3 steps, right? Sacred, shared, selfish.
And
Let's
shared.
talk about selfish, because we probably understand sacred. We probably understand shared.
Mhm.
Selfish for women, that word is
Huge.
ooh.
Yeah. So here's what I've learned to do in the 2 books that followed the first one. I put that little dot in the middle and then did like the ish on there. Because it is not, if you think about sacred intelligence, like I said, it's not just manifesting your greatness for the sake of manifesting your greatness. It's also about sharing that out in the world. But for women, we have a very difficult time saying no. And no is actually a complete sentence. So in my book on sacred intelligence, I really spent some time talking about how to set boundaries. I talk about the importance of getting rid of people in your life who are not good for you. I call it cleaning house, right? You know, all of my stuff has a backdrop of scripture somewhere in there. And so I talk about how Jesus came through cleaning up the temple. I said some of us need to clean house as well. And so the selfish part is really about taking care of yourselves and or ourselves.
Right.
So, Casey, you know, as pastor, people call us all the time. They want us for everything. And as a matter of fact, you can have a death in your family, and people will say, "Pastor, I'm so sorry, but can you pray for me for this?"
Can you?
It shifts just like that. And yes, we're called to do those things. And we also have to find those spaces where we say, somebody else can. So not just as a pastor, but as a coach, you know, one of the things that we have to do as coaches, since the 3 of us on here are coaches, is we also set boundaries when people don't want to pay us our worth.
Yes.
So it's okay to say no, because the thing is, we have a bleeding heart, right? Especially because we want to help everybody in our community. Well, somebody else can help them.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I get it. So how do we teach that? I mean, I know that there's steps to it. What is the difference, you know, between just our intelligence and our wisdom and sacred intelligence? How does that come into play, and how can we learn it?
So I think so for me, our sacred intelligence is really about spending time going deep within. So I believe that we're all divinely created and we're loved unconditionally.
Yes.
And we have to learn to listen to that divine part of us. There's divine wisdom in here, but to sit still long enough to hear the answer. And most of us don't. Most of us, especially if we pray, we're talking all the time. We don't spend time in the quietness. Some people call it, they'll say it's your intuition, but here's what I will say. God will always give you the answer. It's about whether you're listening and whether you're open for it. So if we're talking about making a decision about something, but to be patient enough and listen inwardly about whether that was the right decision. Now, how many times do we say yes when we know we should have said no?
A lot of the time. Yes.
And so even as a coach, there's some people that spirit is saying, don't work with that person. You know it's not going to be worth it for you. You're going to have more of a headache working with that person.
Yes.
So our sacred intelligence allows us to make choices not based on fear or not based on, oh, you know what, I need this $100 that they're going to give me. When in fact, it could be $200, $300, $400 if you have the right client. So our sacred intelligence will not allow us to be attached to the outcome if we're in a conversation with someone, let's say around money. We're not attached to the outcome. We're putting our need out there. We're setting our boundary. And you either do it or you don't. And we're going to be okay because we're relying on that internal guide within us. So it's a practice of just tapping inward, tapping into our sacred intelligence, going inward, asking the divine, which is ourselves, right? We're divinely created. What is coming up for me? What am I basing my decisions and my actions on? Am I basing it on that internal voice that's telling me this is a yes or this is a no?
That is so good.
Mhm.
Before we switch gears just a teeny bit, I just wanted to say I've been reading a lot lately. And so I can't tell you who said this, but it was a male who said being selfish is the best thing for anyone to do, because you're showing the divine God that you appreciate the image in which you were created.
That's
And
right.
so then you can share with other people because you have been selfish. And I had to take that in, and I have to keep thinking about it and reminding myself that absolutely that is what we need to do.
And I think we have to check ourselves and say, well, why do I have the need to do this all the time? Right? You know, you made me think about one time my girlfriend's husband told her he loves taking long baths. And she was saying something. This was when the kids were really, really little. And so she's running around, managing the kids, going here, going there, doing all these things. And then she's like, how can you be taking a 30-minute bath with all there is to? And he said, it's not my fault. You don't know how to relax.
Right.
And she was not happy when he said it, but then she realized, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And we have to do those things. We have to set those boundaries. You even have to teach your kids. For those of you who have kids who are still in home, you have to teach them. When I go in this bathroom, I need to be in this bathroom, and you don't need to interrupt me.
Yes.
Because they come in the bathroom on us, don't they?
Yeah.
Stand there and talk to you like you're not even doing whatever you're doing in there. And we know if you have kids, you know they just walk right on in there.
Yes, they do.
So you have to have a space. You can even have a space in your house where you say, when mommy is here, don't come in. You know, I had when I first went to seminary, my then husband fell and broke both of his legs. So I had toddlers, worked a full-time job, part-time job, going to school, right? And when he broke his leg, so he's home all day, waiting to get that thing off the top shelf. The minute I walked through the door, I need you to get that for me. And what I had to do was to say to him, when I walk through this door, I need just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop the kids to you. I'm going upstairs, and I just need 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And he adapted and they adapted.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
The fact that they adapted is what's beautiful, because it's hard to get people to do that. And I mean, I used to think that selfish was a dirty word. You did not want to be selfish, but it's needed, as you clearly stated, that we have to do that in order for us to care for ourselves. How do we, sort of switch the narrative that people realize when you say that word selfish, that you're not necessarily meaning it in a negative way, that you're just caring for yourself and you want them to see that you need that care?
And I think you just hit it on the head. It's the conversation.
Yeah.
Because people will say, do you know how many people I had who told me don't use that word? It's a provocative word. Don't use it. It's negative. If that's how you see it, but I'm using. See, that's the thing. I'm claiming what's important for me. You don't have to like it. But that's what's important. And I knew that sacred, selfish, and shared had a ring to it. And I was thinking long term about this too. But I really was thinking, no, I have to be selfish. I have to go inward. So the thing about selfish is about handling your business, handling the stuff that you need to take care of, dealing with your wounds, dealing with your hurts, dealing with your pains. That's the selfish part. Going in, taking care of your psychological, your spiritual, your physical, your emotional needs, as well as financial needs. Because we could have a whole show on how we let people have money. Can I hold 5,000? Can I hold 5,000?
Hold.
Right. And so the thing with all of that is, it's fine if you want to do it, but you have to do it making a conscious decision that I am able to do this. It's not going to cause me stress. See, because what we do in our community, because we're taught to take care of each other, if we have a little bit of money and somebody asks you to borrow money, you give them the money because you say, I'm going to be all right till next paycheck. If you don't have enough money in case something happens to you in between that time, you don't need to let them borrow money because you might get it back in the time you want. So it's like, allow people to borrow money when it's not going to put you in harm's way. And that's okay.
Right.
And so I love that you said the word narrative, because culturally we've grown up with taking care of each other.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that also has a downside. We take care of each other to our own demise sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
So the selfish piece is really going inward, asking yourself the question, how will this impact me financially, spiritually, socially, emotionally, mentally, all of that. Mentally, ooh, that's a whole nother one right there. But yeah.
We might need to have her come back every 4th Tuesday. the resident doctor in the house.
Yes, I get excited and I have to remind myself when I'm on the interview, stop, because they might have a question. Stop.
Well, we definitely got to get to some nitty gritty stuff. So you are working with dismantling racism, right? So how does the sacred intelligence intersect with the concept of dismantling racism?
So that's the shared piece, right? You know, that's the piece where we say, I am going to go out and share my gifts with others. I'm going to go out and advocate with others. So we are all called to a purpose. And it's about understanding how to fulfill that purpose. So we have multiple purposes in life as well. Because I will have people who will say to me, well, I'm called to do something else other than dismantling racism. And I'll say, but where's the intersectionality of it? Not everybody will come to me for coaching on dismantling racism or doing a training on dismantling racism, but wherever I can, I do teachable moments with folks. And so that's how I really look at the sacred, selfish, and share. I look at the sacred as, how do we develop that relationship with the divine? The selfish is, how do we develop that relationship with ourselves? And then the shared is about our relationship with other people. So I could have had anything under that umbrella of sacred intelligence, but it just so happens that I've worked in dismantling racism for years and thought after I went to divinity school that God was calling me to the wounds of religion. But then, you know, with the uprising in 2020, I had colleagues saying to me, you know, can you help us? Can you help us? Can you help us? And so that's how I started again with dismantling racism, and ended up writing a book and a radio show and all of that. But it was not in my plan. But guess what? This goes back to the divine. When I look at even the books that I've written, it wasn't intentional that they all fell under those categories.
Wow.
But I listened to what I needed to do in that moment. And that's what the sacred intelligence is, right? Honoring what we need to do in that moment, because we've gone internally and listened to the divine and trusted. That's what the relationship is all about.
Yes.
Trusting that what you're being led to do is the right thing to do.
Do we have to have like a relationship with God or spirituality in order to own and hone our sacred intelligence? Is there any connection to us already being, you know, soulful people ourselves, to, you know, the evolution of that in us?
So I don't think there's a difference. There's not a distinction to me, because you use the word soulful people ourselves. We are endowed with sacred intelligence. We are endowed with this relationship with spirit. Now, each of us might define what that is differently. You might say you are grounded in earth. You're grounded in the trees that are outside. You're grounded in, when you go out in nature, you're experiencing something that is sacred. I might call it God.
Yeah.
Somebody else calls it something else. I don't believe that we have to define for everybody what their connection is.
Okay.
But here's what I will say. It is important to be grounded in something. You cannot have a fly-by-night experience. Like, I'm okay with people saying I'm spiritual and not religious, because I think religion has done a lot to damage us.
Absolutely.
So I love that Casey said that she has other practices that she uses towards healing. Those modalities are important too. God, the divine, love,
Yes.
endowed her with those things, right? And so we need to be connected with something. If we're out here and we're not connected, do you know all this madness that's happening in the world?
Yes.
We're going to be flopping in the wind. So it starts with that sacred relationship, because from that flows the selfish and the shared relationship.
That's beautiful.
So let me ask you a question, because this, most people that you talk to who are doing dismantling racism, they're only doing it from their purview. And this is different for you. You are bringing together people from white people, Black people, all different cultures and ethnicities to talk about racism. And I've always thought that that is the only way that you are able to dismantle racism, if you bring everybody together. Tell me about your approach and what's happening.
So, you know what's really interesting? Many of my clients are white, especially after George Floyd was murdered. They wanted to understand. They're just saying, can you help me? Can you help me to understand this? Because some of them just woke up to racism.
Yeah.
So that was a whole conversation in and of itself. And sometimes it's hard to get people of color to come in with white folks, because we approach things very differently, and it hurts. There's a hurt that we experience during these conversations. And so what I do is, people come to me because they want to be in the trainings. It's not like those mandatory things. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to have the conversations, but I do challenge people and take them out of their comfort zones. And when we are in interracial spaces, as I am sometimes, what I have to do, particularly as a woman of color, challenge the white people in the room enough and hold space for the people of color in that room who might be experiencing their own pain. Because sometimes for white people, they're learning at our expense. And I have to be sure to say to them, this is a place where we're protecting, making everyone safe. And I want them to feel safe too, because I say, ask me any question that you want to ask me. Right? Because I've already set the container and put the bubble up for me. But if you're in my group and they turn to you and they ask you a question, you may not have that container set for you. But I will tell you what was really beautiful. My initial groups after George Floyd was murdered, it was really a combination of predominantly black and white people. And we had very real conversations.
Wow.
I even did programs. I did a program with a white friend of mine, and it was called White Women's Tears, Black Women's Anger.
Ooh, okay.
So we did a workshop. We did a couple of workshops for like an hour and a half, and then we invited people to join us for a 4-week session. And we got down and raw in there. And this particular woman is Buddhist. So we brought our two understandings together, you know, me as a psychologist, her as a Buddhist, and the trainings. And we just really got people to reframe and the way that they thought about things. And we had a beautiful session one night. And this sister just said straight up, I don't trust white people and I don't trust white women. But by the time we were done with our 4-week session, and there was an exercise that I took them through around forgiveness, and she was paired with a white woman, and she says, well, I guess there are some white people I really can't trust. It's about establishing safety as well. And And everything I do it from that place of love.
Yes.
Even though I'm going to push you, it's still
You're gonna
push you from that place of love. And I think that people feel that when they work with me. So, and I also ground people. You know, I do a meditation with them. I teach them how to breathe because it's tough talking about racism.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if we started a conversation, we'd be tough. So I just.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that most of your clients after the George Floyd murder were white. When they came to you, what were they really hoping to accomplish with, you know, with your coaching? And what were they questioning within themselves that they felt they even needed you in the first place?
Well, because people were waking up to racism, one of the things they wanted to know was, am I racist?
Yeah.
Right. You know, and then interestingly enough, there's a fear that they're going to say or do something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say to people, you are going to.
Yes.
There's no mistaking it. But guess what? You're going to say something wrong, whether you go through this training or not, right? You know, at least if you come to the training, there's some education I'm going to give you. And so they're coming, and quite frankly, look, if we're real, back in 2020, so many people wanted to show that they were doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think guilt drove some people to come, or wanting to be on the side of doing something right. Because many of the people were just devastated. They were just devastated by what happened, and not being aware. And it always amazes me because I always say, well, why weren't you aware? George Floyd was not the first man murdered by the police.
Yeah.
In fact, when President Obama was elected, we would hear almost every other week.
Yes.
So, you know, so that's what it's about. That's what they were hoping to come and to learn some tools and some skills. And, you know, in one of my classes, I actually do say, do this, not that. You know, I give them some very practical, you know, things like, don't say I'm articulate, for instance, or don't say I'm not a racist, because when you say that, now I'm getting ready to look and see what's getting ready to come out of your mouth. So, you know, like I teach some very practical things as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Like this past Sunday, I was preaching, and the woman was standing over me, talking to me. And before I knew it, her hand did this in my hair. And she quickly said, "Oh, I just wanted to." So she kind of knew that it was wrong, but her instinct, I guess, was just like. So there are things that definitely are cultural that we could learn, that white people can learn, and probably other cultures as well. Yeah. So how can individuals with privilege, whether it be racial privilege, economic, or otherwise, effectively engage in conversations about racism without overshadowing or silencing marginalized voices? You got into that a little bit with what you were just saying, but there's also privileges between with, say, Black people, right? There's a hierarchy. Like I'm a Black woman, that kind of, honestly speaking, puts me down here. But then when you think about, okay, how much money I might make, it's a little bit more. What kind of job I might have, it's a little bit more. But we all have privileges. Yes. Do you talk about that in your
so absolutely, but I want to tell you this, I don't conflate things when I do my dismantling racism, because often people want to talk about something other than race. So I'm very clear that when people hire me to work with them, we're talking about race.
Right.
We're not talking about gender, we're not talking about sexuality, we're not talking about age, we're talking about race, because it's too easy to talk about those other things. So I just want to be clear about that. But in the conversation about race, I will talk to Black people sometimes about our internalized racism, where we have adapted to colonization And so we think if your skin color is a certain, hue, or your education, or all of those things, we sometimes can, I mean, you've heard enough people of color saying the stuff that, well, why didn't he put his hands up, or he shouldn't have that? They say the same things that white people say. So we have to challenge those things. I also, now listen, this is no shade to anybody on here in terms of background, but I also know that there's a difference between the way Caribbean people sometimes think, or people who are African. I've done groups with them, and they will say, well, it's because Black Americans are X, Y, and Z, until you open their eyes to, no, they're not discriminating against you because of your accent or because you're from another country. It's because of the color of your skin. Absolutely. And once they awaken to that, so there's a lot of work that we have to do around privilege. I mean, I do talk to a degree about that, but I just want to be clear that overall we're sticking with race. And when I talk about racism, there's internalized racism, but there's racism too, because we'll say, the Black people from the suburbs think they're better than the Black people from, the inner city, or people of color. Oh my gosh, we are terrible with one another. Like, the Latinx person might think they're better than the Black person, or the Asian person. Like, all of that, we talk about one another. And what's interesting is it's all because we're trying to get our piece of the pie of this colonization, and we don't even recognize. So a part of what I do in my trainings on dismantling racism, I teach people about our heritage. I teach people about who we are, and not trauma porn, but most of the time we are Black History Month. You get a million things about Black people, and then you don't even remember some of them because it's like a fire hose. But if you teach it gradually, right? And I try to make sure, like Sunday in church, I preached on Harriet Tubman, right? Because what do we hear? A little blurb.
Right.
But I talked about Harriet's life and what she had done. And we have to stop and think about what a resilient woman to keep going back to free people.
Yes.
Right? But we don't stop and think about the details of things. And so I feel like it's my job to do that. And so that's the shared part of it, right? Is building people up so they can go out and do the work. But in the process of building them up, I'm also helping myself to understand who I am as a Black woman. Right? So,
amen.
Building myself up.
I love it. I love it. Well, dismantling racism in the world that we're living in today, what does that look like to you moving forward, and bringing everyone that's watching along and hoping that they share it with those in their household and in their world?
So if I just talk about what I have in my book on dismantling racism, there are 3 pillars. Everything for me is around sacred, selfish, and shared. And I call it the sacred intelligence journey of faith. And for me, it's about, what's your sacred motive? Why do you even want to dismantle racism? Because not everybody does. And then many people who want to dismantle it, is it because it's a show? Look at how things have changed since 2020. There were a lot of people talking about it, not as much now. So what's your sacred motive? And then the second piece is our selfish mindset, to believe that we actually can dismantle racism. And so if we're going to think about, how do we get through these years of hatred that we're seeing popping up? They were already there. They just kind of came up, right? But do we believe that it can change? It starts with that. Because if you believe it can change, then your actions will be different. Your conversation will be different. Your language and your thoughts will be different. So when I am teaching people about that, I talk about a selfish mindset, getting it together and retraining your brain, changing the narrative, And so I do a whole process in my book where I talk about that, because that's the psychology part, right? Like changing your cognitions. And then the shared part is also having faith that other people really want to dismantle racism. We're not by ourselves. I mean, my goodness, look, our church was burned down in 2020 as a result of a hate crime. And I will tell you, there have been people of all races to really come and to support us. And if I didn't believe that we're all in this together, there's no way that and I'm going to say this in particular, the white churches in our particular, because we have presbyteries, have really, really come forth with the money.
Nice.
To help us to rebuild. In fact, we are having a gala this weekend, and some of them, I had two churches, because I did not want to do a gala if we were not going to raise a certain amount of money. I didn't want to. They're expensive to put on, the production.
Yes.
I literally talked to two churches who agreed to back the gala so that I wouldn't have to worry about money coming out. And these are white churches.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Who understood the importance of us as a people coming together to dismantle racism. And they also understood that if I am going to do the work that God requires me to do in my neighborhood, I need to have a church to do it.
Yes. I love that. Yeah.
And so those are the stories that we have to help people to know too, that because we have our own stories in our communities about other groups. But look at this. I mean, even this gala is sold out.
Wow.
And it's a combination of races, coming together, because people just want to be there to say, we will not let hate win.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I love that. So now this gala, which you almost were not going to have, has been supported by people from diverse cultures and churches in your, I love that. I love that. How do we bring that to every community, every state, every just where, that they can see that we all need to have that support from our local, churches and communities to come together and share.
So let me be clear. These weren't necessarily local. These are churches that are from miles away.
Wow.
So we're all in a presbytery together. And so it's about relationships.
Nice. So you're saying that it was even different denominations?
No, it's the same denomination.
Okay.
But here's what happened. I knew I wanted someone to back. So I talked to someone in my presbytery, a white person, and I said, this is what I want to happen. Do you have some suggestions of how to make that happen? And then she put me together. Actually, am I frozen here? Am I good?
You are frozen, but we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. So then she connected me with two churches. I met with those churches, and I thought that I would have to explain to them why this was important to me to do, because they could have said, well, we could just give you the money. They understood the importance that we needed healing in spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and all of that. And they just, gave me the money to back it. So it's about building relationships and rapport with people. And I think the Bible says you have not because you ask not.
Yes.
To that.
Wow.
And to be clear, it has been a lot of work planning this. I've had to do multiple interviews, the podcasts, all of that. But it's still about getting the word out there and letting them know that we are all in this thing together.
Yes.
But I know we're going to be ending soon, but the word, I got so many words from that, but the word I think for all of us is sometimes we close ourselves off from the other, right? That's what they call us. We're the other, but I'm using the same terminology. And because we don't either want to deal, or we don't want to ask them for anything, I'm going to do it on my own. But there are people out there who will help our causes, but we have to be open to the no, the maybe, or the flat out, like, get out my face. But you're courageous. You've been courageous.
And we have to let ego go, right? But Howard Thurman, the great theologian, said that if you if you don't take the extended white hand that's reaching towards you, you will actually miss out on a lot of opportunities. Those aren't his exact words. I'm paraphrasing it, but really, if I just said, I don't want anything from you or whatever, no. And it's not, tell you the truth, if they're giving it to me because they feel guilty, that's on them. That's not my business.
Right. I was going to ask that question. Like, did you feel it at any point? Because again, you said that your church was destroyed, and I'm so sorry about that, was destroyed because of hate. And then obviously, I mean, is this a big church? It's a huge church.
It's not a huge church. No, it's not a huge church. But here's the thing. That community was devastated because just as we're devastated when we see somebody in our racial group do something, I think other people are looking at that, and if it's somebody in their group and shaking their heads in the same way. And the fact that it was a church, it carries another level to it. And that whole community just, kind of came together when this first happened.
Right.
And again, they have been really, really beautiful in the response. I've had people who've seen the story who will say, well, we're going to send you some money. I just got off the phone with somebody really shortly before this who is not in our denomination, who I have a relationship with. It's a white church. I've gone there. I've spoken on racism before. I've trained some of their leaders in the church. And he said, we're not going to be able to make it, but we're going to send you $1,000.
I love it. I
Right.
love it. Well, we are winding down in time. We have literally about a minute and a half, and I don't want to let you go, but you have to come back, my friend. You really do. We didn't even really touch upon what we could have, but I want you, if you don't mind, is there a last question that you have for Reverend Dr. TLC, Reverend Case, Dr. Take KC.
KC is good. We friends. My only lingering questions: how are the people of MLK Presbyterian Church doing now?
We are fine, and I think this gala we are excited about it, and so it is actually uplifting us. And I have been very careful from day one to say that was a building. We are the church.
Yes.
And to help people not own, because one of the questions was, well, just because of the color of my skin, somebody would do this. And I said, you don't own that though. That's their stuff. That's not yours. And so we've kept moving. We've not missed one beat since 2020 happened. COVID or anything. We've not stopped worshiping, praising, none of it.
Wow,
amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, sharing what it is to transform our life with sacred intelligence. While we're going to show your book, and we're also going to show, the information of where we can find you, reach you, follow you. Tell us what is on your heart. What would you like to share with us before we go?
I think the main thing I want to just say for individuals is know that you are loved unconditionally and you are divinely created, and let that be your guide as you navigate life.
Yes, I love it. And now your information, we'd like to put that up real quick. Yes, you can follow Reverend Dr. TLC at Sacred Intelligence LLC. There is her information. We will definitely be having you on again soon, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Reverend Dr. KC. I'm going to get it right, my friends. I'm going to have to just put a Reverend Doctor in front of LDW. Very good. You ladies
I
have
love it.
inspired me. You really have. I appreciate you, the conversation. We will do it again. In the meantime, I want you guys to tune in to another episode next week of Our Unity. Please remember that peace and love is in the palm of our hand. So please, let's go out there, be some love, give some love, and just share some love. We will see you next week. Thank you so much, Reverend Doctors TLC and Casey Jones. I want you ladies to have a wonderful evening, and
Thank
I
you.
love you. Have a
Love
good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Now.